She was just a teenage girl riding her bike home. He was a calculating predator who had already tortured and murdered multiple women. He thought she'd be an easy target, another name on his growing list. But within 24 hours the hunter would become disoriented, confused, and utterly manipulated. Because this wasn't just any girl, this was Lisa McVey. And he just kidnapped the wrong victim. The streets of Tampa, Florida in 1984 were cloaked in fear. One by one, women were disappearing only to be discovered days later, lifeless, violated, discarded like they meant nothing. A predator was on the loose and he was fast, smart, and terrifyingly meticulous. The city had no idea who was behind the horror, and women were warned not to walk alone. Curfews were set, parents grew anxious, and yet the killer kept hunting. His name was Bobby Joe Long, and no one knew it yet, but he was building a body count that would place him among the most vicious serial killers in Florida's history. While the city's fear escalated, another story was quietly unraveling behind closed doors, the kind of story no headlines ever bother to print. Lisa McVey was a 17-year-old girl with a haunted childhood. She lived in a home where pain wasn't a visitor, it was a permanent resident. Her mother was a drug addict who had relinquished her, and Lisa was forced to live with her grandmother and the grandmother's boyfriend, a man who had been sexually abusing her for years. Every day Lisa endured his assault. Every night she prayed to disappear. Her life was a quiet storm, filled with shame, fear, and desperation. Lisa had even written a suicide note. She had planned to end it all. But something in her, a flicker of stubborn survival, a whisper of hope, had stopped her just short of taking her life. Instead, she went to work that evening at a donut shop. She finished her shift, cleaned up, and mounted her bicycle for the ride back home. It was dark, quiet, and she followed her regular route, unaware that a monster had already chosen her. She didn't hear him at first. The car crept up behind her, lights off. A man jumped out. She tried to pedal faster, but it was too late. He grabbed her, forced a gun to her head, and dragged her into his car. Within seconds she was bound, blindfolded, and thrown into the passenger seat. Everything moved too fast. Panic surged, but Lisa didn't scream. She didn't fight wildly. She did something else, something different. She started thinking. She listened to the engine. She counted every turn the car made. She noted the bumps, the sounds of bridges, and even the way the killer breathed. She couldn't see his face, but she was memorizing everything. Her heartbeat thundered in her ears, but her mind was sharp. In that moment, Lisa McVey wasn't just a frightened teenager. She was becoming a strategist. She knew if she panicked, she would die. But if she observed, adapted, and played along, maybe she'd have a chance. The ride seemed to last forever. The man said nothing. She could smell something sharp in the car, maybe alcohol, maybe sweat. It didn't matter. What mattered was surviving. The vehicle finally stopped and he dragged her out. She could hear a door creak open. Carpet under her feet. She was inside his apartment. Still blindfolded, still restrained, she was led to a room and pushed down. And then the silence. The terrifying, suffocating silence. Her captor moved around, muttering to himself, organizing something. Lisa knew what was coming. She had read about serial killers. She had watched movies. She understood. This wasn't a robbery. This was something darker. She was likely going to die. But she couldn't allow that thought to consume her. So she spoke. She told him she had a sick father she needed to care for. She pretended to sympathize with him. She said things like, "I don't want to be here, but I understand you're hurting." The killer responded. Maybe not verbally, but she felt it, a change in his tone, a pause in his violence. He wasn't expecting empathy. He was expecting tears, screaming, submission. Instead, he was being disarmed by the very thing he thought made her weak, her words. Lisa kept talking. Not too much. Just enough to seem vulnerable, relatable, human. She remembered to leave fingerprints everywhere she could. She made mental notes of furniture, smells, even the texture of the couch. At one point, she managed to lift the blindfold slightly while he was in another room. She saw his face, for just a second, and burned the image into her mind. Hours passed. Abuse came, but Lisa endured. And with every passing hour, she noticed something else. He wasn't getting more aggressive, he was getting uncertain. She was disrupting the pattern. She was making him hesitate. Somewhere deep in his twisted psyche, a part of him didn't want to kill her anymore. She had gotten inside his head. Lisa McVey was surviving, not just by luck, but by turning herself into the one thing a predator never expects, a threat he couldn't understand. Lisa sat still in the darkness, blindfolded, her wrists tightly bound. The room smelled musty like sweat, dust, and old wood. The man moved around her, pacing, mumbling now and then but mostly staying quiet. Every sound echoed in her ears. She didn't know how much time had passed since she had been taken. An hour, maybe 2, but she knew that time was running out. And yet, something inside her refused to crumble. She could feel fear crawling up her spine, but she kept pushing it down. Panic would be her death sentence. Calm, calculated calm, was her only chance. She began talking. Softly at first. She told him her name. She told him she didn't want to be hurt. She told him about her imaginary sick father, saying she had to take care of him and couldn't be away too long. She invented details, a heart condition, an appointment at the hospital, medications he needed. It wasn't the truth, but it didn't matter. She needed him to see her as a person, not an object. She needed him to think twice. And incredibly, something in her words worked. His voice softened when he responded. He asked her questions. Short ones. Then he'd go quiet again. But he was listening. While he moved around the room, Lisa kept mapping it in her head. The number of steps he took from door to bed. The time it took him to return. The direction he came from. She left her fingerprints on every surface she could. Furniture, the door frame, even a soda can. Anything that might help police later. She had no guarantee she'd survive, but she wasn't going down without a trace. Her mind had switched to survival mode, but not the kind that begged and pleaded. She was studying him. Reading him. Learning his weaknesses. The man fed her at one point. A sandwich. She didn't ask for it, he just gave it to her. It was bizarre. She thanked him. Polite, restrained. Not in fear but in strategy. He didn't expect that. He paused. She could hear it in his breathing. He was confused. And confusion gave her power. He didn't just want to control her body, he wanted to control her spirit. But Lisa didn't give him that. She didn't scream or cry. She didn't fight. She talked to him with just enough vulnerability to appear broken, but with enough strength to keep him curious. That balance, playing the fragile girl while also inserting gentle empathy, kept him off balance. She asked him his name. He wouldn't tell her. She didn't push. She told him she understood pain. That she had a rough life too. She wasn't lying about that. What she didn't tell him was that she had already survived worse monsters than him. When he fell asleep next to her, Lisa stayed wide awake. Her hands were still tied, but she didn't move. She listened to every breath he took. Every shift in the mattress. The sound of the ceiling fan. Anything that could serve as a clue. She didn't know if she'd be killed the next morning, or in the next hour, but she was determined that if she did die, someone would know who did it. Then came the moment that would change everything. After about 26 hours, he stood in the room, staring at her. His tone had changed completely. He told her he was going to let her go. Lisa blinked, trying not to show shock. This wasn't how these stories ended. Victims didn't get released. But she nodded gently. She didn't question him. She didn't ask why. She just waited. He ordered her to get dressed. He blindfolded her again and led her back to the car. The ride was quiet. Tense. She thought he might change his mind. Kill her and dump her like the others. But he didn't. After a long drive, the car stopped. He leaned over and whispered a warning, not to tell anyone or he would come back and kill her. Then he pushed her out of the car. Lisa stood in the darkness, blindfolded, in the middle of nowhere. But she recognized the scent in the air, the smell of wet grass and oil. She listened carefully. Cars in the distance. Train horns. She pulled off the blindfold and realized she was near a familiar road. Somehow, he had let her go within walking distance of home. Her legs were shaking, but she ran. Ran as fast as she could. She had survived. When she made it home, her grandmother didn't believe her at first. Neither did the police. A 17-year-old girl kidnapped and released by a serial killer? It didn't sound real. But then Lisa began detailing everything. The turns the car took, the color of his carpet, the furniture layout, even his face. She described his vehicle. The soda can. The blindfold. She remembered it all. Every terrifying second. The investigators realized they weren't dealing with just another traumatized teen. They were speaking to someone who had memorized her way through a nightmare. Her information matched recent crime scenes. She gave them what they needed. And within days, police tracked down Bobby Joe Long, one of the most sadistic serial killers in Florida history. Lisa hadn't just survived him. She had outsmarted him. She had manipulated him. She had won. Lisa McVey walked into the police station with trembling hands but eyes full of purpose. She had just escaped a serial killer, and she wasn't going to let him disappear into the shadows. The officers listened, half skeptical, half intrigued, as she told them every detail she could recall. Not just how she was taken but what she had seen, what she had touched, what she had heard. The path the car took. The turns. The timing. She described the apartment layout, the kind of bindings he used, even how his breath changed when she spoke kindly to him. One by one they began to realize this girl wasn't just lucky, she had been operating with intent. She had made herself a living case file. The detectives, especially one seasoned officer who took her seriously, began cross-referencing her statements with their ongoing investigations. Her description of the red Dodge Magnum matched a car that had been seen near multiple crime scenes. The couch she described, brown, torn on the side, matched witness descriptions from a missing woman's last known location. The man's face, which Lisa had seen for only a few seconds through the blindfold, was burned into her memory. And when a suspect was identified, Bobby Joe Long, Lisa confirmed it instantly from a photo lineup. There was no doubt in her voice. No fear. Just clarity. Within days, Bobby Joe Long was arrested in Tampa. Police found evidence in his apartment that matched Lisa's description down to the smallest detail. Rope. Tape. The soda can. Fingerprints. Even the exact blindfold. It all matched. But what investigators weren't fully prepared for was what came next. As they dug into Long's history, they uncovered a chilling series of crimes. He had raped over 50 women. He had murdered at least 10. Each killing followed a brutal pattern. He would kidnap, sexually assault, strangle, then discard the body in isolated areas. He left behind almost nothing, until Lisa. Lisa had been the break in the case that law enforcement had been desperate for. Her courage and meticulous memory helped connect the dots. She hadn't just escaped, she had dismantled his facade. During questioning, Long was quiet at first. But under pressure and mounting evidence, he broke. He confessed. To the rapes. To the killings. To everything. But it was Lisa's story that stunned the public and authorities alike. She had turned a situation of complete powerlessness into one of total control. At the trial, prosecutors laid out the gruesome facts. The jury listened to testimonies from the families of his victims. But it was Lisa's story that pierced through the courtroom. Her poise, her recollection, and her sheer will to survive gripped everyone in the room. She was no longer just a victim. She was the symbol of everything he couldn't destroy. The trial ended with Bobby Joe Long receiving the death penalty. The monster who had terrorized Florida for years would never hurt another woman again. But for Lisa, the story didn't end in the courtroom. Years passed. Lisa grew older, but the memories didn't fade. What did change was her role in the world. She didn't hide from the trauma. She didn't bury the past. She used it. She became a law enforcement officer, joining the Hillsborough County Sheriff's Office, the very same department that had once doubted her. She wore the badge not just as a job but as a statement. She had once been a scared teenager in the back of a killer's car. Now she was the one hunting predators. Lisa worked on cases involving child exploitation and missing persons. She advocated for survivors. She spoke in schools. Her voice became a weapon, her story a warning, and a source of hope. The irony wasn't lost on anyone. The girl no one expected to survive had become the woman making sure others did. In 2019, Bobby Joe Long was executed by lethal injection. Lisa McVey was there. She sat in the front row as he took his final breath. She didn't cry. She didn't flinch. She watched. And when it was over, she walked out, not with vengeance but with peace. The chapter had closed. The nightmare was over. She had outlived him. Outsmarted him. And ultimately she had won. Her story has since been retold in documentaries, books, and television films. But nothing quite captures the quiet power of the girl who refused to die. Lisa McVey's name is now known not because she was a victim, but because she made sure she wasn't the last. Her legacy is one of survival, not by chance but by choice. A 17-year-old who, in the darkest room of her life, lit a spark strong enough to expose a serial killer, and brave enough to keep burning.